You may have heard the Chancellor recently tell us that we need the banks to lend more to get the economy moving. But what if that idea is wrong? What if the banks, as they work today, can and won't grow the real economy? Let's take a closer look. In the past, banks were heavily regulated. Lending was carefully directed, much of it into productive investment, like businesses and infrastructure. But in the 1980s and 90s, Conservative and Labour governments deregulated finance. They let banks lend, however, and to whomever they liked. And what happened? They didn't flood money into factories, renewable energy, or local businesses. Instead, they poured it into housing, financial speculation, and asset markets. Today in the UK, over 60% of bank lending goes toward mortgages, bidding up house prices, not building homes. Another big chunk goes into financial trading, not funding the real economy, and only a tiny sliver, around 10% or less, goes to the kind of businesses that create new jobs and real growth. So when governments and economists say, we need the banks to lend more, they rarely ask, lend to what? Mainstream economics often treats banks as neutral middlemen, moving savings to borrowers. But that's not how it works. Banks create money when they make loans. They're not recycling old money. They're generating new purchasing power. If that new money just goes into buying houses, you don't get growth, just more private debt, higher prices, and people trapped with big mortgages and little left to spend. The result? We have an economy where more and more people's income goes just to service debt, not to buy goods, invest, or save. This is what economists call debt-led stagnation. It might look like growth on paper, but it's fragile and dangerous. And we've seen what happens when this debt bubble pops. The 2008 crisis was built on risky lending, speculation, and a complete failure to regulate finance in the public interest. But instead of fixing the system, we bailed it out and doubled down. Why haven't things changed? Because the financial sector holds enormous influence over policymakers. Banks spend millions on lobbying and enjoy a seat at the top table. They shape policy to suit their interests, not yours. And who benefits? Big banks, property investors, and global elites who can move money offshore at the click of a button. So what does create the growth the Chancellor is asking for? History shows that most productive economic growth happens when governments invest directly. Not just hoping banks will do the right thing, and certainly not just giving handouts to big corporations hoping wealth will trickle down. From the post-war recovery to green energy today, it has been direct public investment that gets things moving. So the next time someone says, we need to get the banks lending again, ask them, lending to what? Because banks, left to their own devices, won't build the future we need. They prove to be wealth extractors, not wealth creators. It's time to stop waiting for finance to save us and start investing in the economy we want. If this makes sense to you, share this video. Let's start talking honestly about money, power, and who the economy really works for.